Well, this may be good news for our chiefs and bad news for our city manager, but I'm willing to budget and help provide the security that public safety requires. But I'm willing to do it for the event that this community has enjoyed for the past 30 years. And frankly, I'm not convinced that the direction we're headed in with this event right now is the same as what this community has embraced for all those years. I hear this thinking that bigger is better, the perception that we do this as an economic engine. And frankly, that's never been my feeling about the Twilight Dance Series and now the Twilight Concert Series. This is a community party where everybody is welcome. I heard tonight even the suggestion that we might defray the expense by charging a fee for admission. Our pier is not a commercial concert venue. That's not what it's there for. That's not what we've ever wanted to use it for. And to move in that direction, I think, is a mistake I wouldn't be willing to go along with. We've had, in the last few years, a different kind of programming, more commercially successful bands. And as I talked about earlier tonight, I used to work in radio. I know the whole business of the music business. What we used to have at the Pier for almost 30 years was a very carefully curated series of top-notch acts from around the world who weren't necessarily commercial hits. Types of music you didn't get to hear anyplace else, that our community got to go down there and enjoy as a community side by side. And it started out on the pier and it moved down onto the beach. And there's nothing at all wrong with being on the beach. But if we begin now to think bigger is necessarily better, we could actually destroy what I called the magic of this event before. I don't think that magic requires lots of commercial advertising. And frankly, the Jumbotron, among other things, projects commercial advertising down onto that beach. The signage that we've allowed is commercial advertising. The company that the Pier hired to do the programming the last few years is much more of a commercial concert venue type of a company. They have other venues in other parts of the country, and I wouldn't want the Pier to become just another of the stations on their circuit where they send, concerts around to. The concerts have gotten more commercial radio oriented and less eclectic, less the kind of music you can't hear except by coming to the Santa Monica Pier, which for 30 years was what we gave to this region, was here's a place you can come on a Thursday night and hear a band you won't hear on the radio. Hear music that you've never been exposed to before. Learn something new musically and hang out with your friends. And it worked really, really well for a lot of years. In the recession, we hit a point where the revenues were no longer matching the expenses. And so we made some changes hoping to increase the revenue. We've seen that increasing the revenue worked actually beyond our expectations, and it increased the size of the event to the point where tonight we have public safety people saying, you know what, nothing wrong has happened. There's nothing bad about you people who've been coming. Thank you for coming. I'm glad to have you here in our town on Thursday nights. But things can happen. I never thought there was anything to worry about with our farmers market until 10 years ago. And I presided at some of the memorial services, so I'm not going to forget that. Things like that can happen when you have a crowd of people and you haven't thought through ahead what happens if one person turns. And we've seen in our country, unfortunately, that mental illness is on the uprise, the tendency toward violence is on the uprise, and thousands of well-meaning Ellis and Fellas people down there on the beach won't be able to stop it from happening if our police and our fire aren't there to help and to step in. So I think tonight we have to take really seriously what's been brought to us here. And whatever we come up with, and I want to hear what my other council members feel are the most important points. I've talked about, making this a special magical music event, not just a big commercial concert. That's the really important thing to me, and respecting the neighbors is important to me. But whatever we do, I think we have to do it in the context of understanding that the public safety concerns must drive us, that we have to tonight be responsive to those concerns and help ourselves, our public safety officials, our city staff, and the Pier board in a direction where we have safe events. Safe and magical is what we should be shooting for. Well, I'm really glad that the people who testified about how much fun they've had by coming and hanging out at these concerts stayed to hear that the council here is trying to work toward a solution. This city, unlike most cities, has hosted a weekly party for free on Thursday nights for almost 30 years. And we want to continue doing that. But we also need to make sure it's safe and to make sure it works for you who come and for the community who host you. And that's why we're spending so much time on this tonight. I don't know how many, well, I know the council must remember Ben Franz Knight. Ben Franz Knight was the director of our Pier for many years and helped run the concerts during a time when they were going very well. And I don't know how to describe Ben except to say that as Tommy Lasorda is to the Dodgers, Ben Franz Knight is to the Pier. I mean, he just gets it totally and is totally committed to it. And he got a better job and moved to Seattle. But he wrote us an email today, which I think the whole council probably got. And I just want to read one part. The concerns raised by law enforcement and public safety experts must be fully considered and addressed. Arguing over the Jumbotron misses the bigger issue that all reasonable efforts need to be made to manage crowd size given current legal and venue constraints. Trying to preserve promotional tools based on potential sponsorship revenue does not make sense unless the tools are aligned with venue capacity and character. So venue capacity and character. We have a 100-year-old pier, a wonderful historic old wooden pier that was not built to be a concert venue and which I will not see turned into a commercial concert venue as some people might hope it would be. I'm also not going to sell our beach just because sponsors have become more demanding. If they demand the Jumbotron, well, that's their demand. We don't necessarily have to sell eyeballs on the beach. Limited beach spillover and people having a good time on the beach, that's entirely welcome. I've been down on the beach as well as up on the pier at different times. But this can't become a commercial concert on the beach. We're not in the commercial concert on the beach business. And if we begin to be, then we have to allow all sorts of other commercial events on the beach, which I don't think we'd want to do with Santa Monica Beach. So I don't think the wonderful social interaction that we heard about requires an intensifying commercial environment. We've already got the environment we need. The ocean, the sand, the pier, and the music wafting down from the pier. Let's make the most of that and not turn this into an ever-growing, revenue-directed commercial entity. I think I'd really like to stay with the size that worked for so many years. I think we got a bit beyond that. I think we do need to dial it back. I think we need to stop with the Jumbotron making the beach the focus instead of the pier the focus. Let the beach be the spillover. Let the folks with the yellow polka dot umbrella go down there on the beach and have a great time. I have no issue with that at all. But I would have an issue with sending a Jumbotron issue down to the south and having 30,000 and then 40,000 and then 50,000 and then having other commercial operators come to us and say, well, you, the city, do concerts on the beach. We should be allowed to do that too. And pretty soon the beach, which is the most special thing about Santa Monica, is lost. So let's remember, we've got exactly the environment we want. Let's party in what we have and not lose sight of why it's magic.